Marcus Chen had been flying cargo runs between the outer colonies for 3 years, but he'd never encountered anyone quite like Captain Elena Vasquez. She appeared at the spaceport on Kepler 442b like a ghost, materializing from the perpetual mists that shrouded the planet's surface. Her reputation preceded her. The Widow, they called her, though no one seemed to know why. The first thing Marcus noticed wasn't her weathered face or the way she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen too much. It was her spacesuit. While every other spacer wore the standard issue EVA gear, lightweight, flexible, designed for efficiency, Elena's suit was different. Bulkier, older, with modifications that made no immediate sense. Strange ports and connections dotted its surface like technological scars. And the helmet's visor was tinted so dark that her face remained perpetually shadowed. "You're the pilot heading to the Centauri way station?" Her voice crackled through the suit's external speakers, even though they stood in the pressurized cargo bay of his ship, the Lucky Strike. Marcus nodded, trying not to stare at her unusual equipment. "That's right. Manifest says you need passage to the Outer Ring territories, emergency transport." Elena's helmet turned toward him, and though he couldn't see her eyes through the dark visor, he felt the weight of her gaze. "Emergency is putting it mildly, pilot. How much do you know about the hegemony's advance into human space?" The question caught Marcus off guard. Everyone knew about the hegemony, the alien confederation that had been steadily encroaching on human colonies for the past 5 years. Their technology was superior, their ships faster, and their intentions unclear. But they hadn't crossed into human space directly. Not yet. "I know they've been testing our borders," Marcus said carefully. "Why?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the Lucky Strike's cargo bay hummed with the familiar sounds of a ship preparing for departure. Crates of medical supplies and terraforming equipment secured themselves with magnetic clamps, and the atmospheric recyclers kicked into higher gear. "They crossed the line 3 days ago," Elena said finally. "Hit the research station at Wolf 359. No survivors, but they left something behind. Something that changes everything we thought we knew about human hegemony relations." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Wolf 359 was deep in human space, well beyond the contested border zones. If the hegemony had struck there, it meant the Cold War everyone had been pretending was containable had just turned hot. "What does this have to do with your passage request?" he asked. Elena's helmet tilted slightly, and for the first time, Marcus caught a glimpse of movement behind the tinted visor. "Because I was there, at Wolf 359, and what I learned—" She paused, one gloved hand touching something on her suit's chest panel. "Let's just say the hegemony isn't as invincible as they'd like us to believe." Marcus started the pre-flight sequence, his hands moving automatically over familiar controls while his mind raced. Elena Vasquez had been at Wolf 359. She'd survived when no one else had, and now she was wearing a suit that looked like it belonged in a museum, refusing to remove it even in a pressurized environment. "How long since you've been out of that suit?" Marcus asked as they strapped in for departure. The question seemed to amuse her. He heard something that might have been a laugh, distorted by the suit's speakers. "Do you always think about what's under my spacesuit?" she asked, echoing words that would haunt him for weeks to come. The Lucky Strike lifted off from Kepler 442b's surface, rising through layers of thick atmosphere toward the pale stars beyond. Marcus had made this run dozens of times, but never with cargo quite like this. Elena remained silent during the initial burn. Her attention focused on a data tablet connected to her suit by a thick cable. "What exactly happened at Wolf 359? Marcus asked once they'd cleared the planet's gravity well. Elena's fingers stopped moving across her tablet. "The hegemony didn't just attack the station. They tested something, a weapon, but not like anything we've seen before. It wasn't designed to destroy ships or structures. What was it designed for? People. Specifically, human people. Elena's voice carried a weight that made Marcus's stomach turn. The hegemony has been studying us, pilot, learning what makes us different from them, what makes us vulnerable. Marcus adjusted their course toward the hyperspace jump point, trying to process what Elena was telling him. The hegemony were an alliance of 6 different alien species, each with their own advantages. The Keth were master engineers, the Vorhan had incredible reflexes, and the Zephyrians could survive in environments that would kill most other life forms. But humans? Humans were average at everything, exceptional at nothing. At least that's what the xenobiologists claimed. "What did you find out?" Marcus asked. Elena was quiet for so long that he began to think she wouldn't answer. Finally, she spoke, and her voice was different, harder, with an edge of something that might have been pride. "We're not as average as we think. The hegemony's weapon was supposed to incapacitate humans by exploiting our psychological weaknesses. Fear, despair, hopelessness, emotions they assumed would paralyze us." She paused, and Marcus heard the soft hiss of her suit's life support systems. It had the opposite effect. "What do you mean?" "I mean humans don't break the way other species do. When faced with impossible odds, when everything seems lost, we don't surrender. We adapt. We fight. We find a way." Elena's helmet turned toward Marcus, and he felt that piercing gaze again. The hegemony's psychological weapon didn't destroy the humans at Wolf 359. It turned them into something they'd never encountered before. Marcus felt a mixture of fear and excitement. What happened to the research team? They fought back. Against impossible odds with inferior technology, they fought back. And they won. Elena's voice carried a note of savage satisfaction. The hegemony ship that attacked them? It's floating dead in space. Its crew traumatized by their encounter with human determination. The hyperspace jump point was approaching, and Marcus began the final navigation sequences. But his attention was focused on Elena's words, on the implications of what she was telling him. If that's true, why isn't this information being broadcast across human space? This could change everything about our defensive strategy. Elena's suit made a soft, clicking sound as she adjusted something on her chest panel. Because the information came at a cost. The humans at Wolf 359 survived the hegemony attack, but they were changed by it. The psychological weapon didn't break them, but it did something else. Something unexpected. What kind of change? The kind that makes the hegemony very interested in capturing one of them alive. Elena's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The kind that makes someone like me worth more than a dozen standard military vessels. Marcus's hands paused over the hyperspace controls. "Elena, what exactly are you?" She was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke, her words carried the weight of confession. "I'm one of the Wolf 359 survivors, and what's under this spacesuit?" She touched her helmet with one gloved hand. "Let's just say it would give the xenobiologists a lot to think about." The Lucky Strike jumped to hyperspace, leaving Kepler 442b far behind. But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were carrying something far more dangerous than he'd bargained for. Elena Vasquez, the widow, was hiding a secret that could change the balance of power in the galaxy, and somehow Marcus had become responsible for delivering that secret to its destination. As the ship settled into its hyperspace cruise, Elena finally removed her helmet. What Marcus saw in the dim light of the cargo bay made him understand why she preferred to keep it on. Her face was human, recognizably so, but there were differences. Her eyes held flecks of color that seemed to shift and move, and when she smiled, he caught a glimpse of something that shouldn't exist. "Still wondering what's under my spacesuit?" Elena asked, her real voice clear and melodic without the suit's speakers. Marcus swallowed hard, realizing that this journey was going to be far more complicated than a simple cargo run. Whatever had happened at Wolf 359, whatever changes Elena had undergone, he was now part of a story that would determine the future of human space. The Lucky Strike flew on through hyperspace, carrying its mysterious passenger toward a destiny that none of them could predict. But one thing was becoming clear. The war with the hegemony was about to take a very unexpected turn. The Lucky Strike had been in hyperspace for 18 hours when Marcus first noticed Elena wasn't sleeping. She sat in the passenger compartment, her suit still on but with the helmet resting beside her, staring out the viewport at the swirling patterns of hyperspace. Her transformed features were more visible now in the ship's normal lighting, and Marcus found himself stealing glances whenever he passed through. Her skin had a subtle luminescence, like moonlight on water, and those shifting eyes seemed to track movement that wasn't there. But it was her hands that fascinated and disturbed him most. When she thought he wasn't looking, she would flex her fingers, and he could swear he saw something moving beneath the skin. Not veins or tendons, but something else entirely. "You're staring again," Elena said without turning from the viewport. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "Sorry, I'm just trying to understand what happened to you." "Understanding and accepting are two different things, pilot." Elena finally turned to look at him, and those strange eyes fixed on his face. "Most humans can't handle the reality of what we've become." Marcus settled into the chair across from her. The Lucky Strike's autopilot was handling their journey efficiently, leaving him with little to do but wrestle with questions that seemed to multiply with each passing hour. "Try me," he said. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her gaze returning to the swirling void outside. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of memory. The Wolf 359 research station was studying hegemony technology. We'd managed to capture intact pieces from their border skirmishes, weapons, sensors, communication devices. My team was trying to understand how their tech interfaced with living beings. She paused, her fingers absently tracing patterns on her suit's arm panel. "What we discovered was that hegemony technology isn't just advanced. It's alive." Marcus leaned forward. "Alive how?" "Biomechanical symbiosis. Every hegemony device contains living components that bond with the user's nervous system. It's what makes their tech so efficient, so responsive. But it also means their technology learns, adapts, evolves." Elena's expression darkened. "And it means they assumed human biology would be compatible with their systems. The weapon they tested on your station, it was biotechnology?" Elena nodded. "A symbiotic organism designed to interface with human neural pathways. They expected it to overwhelm our consciousness, turn us into compliant subjects for study." Her laugh was bitter. "They didn't account for human stubbornness." Marcus watched as Elena's skin seemed to shimmer slightly, the luminescence shifting in patterns that almost looked like data streams. "What actually happened?" "The organism tried to integrate with our nervous systems, just as designed. But instead of overwhelming us, something unexpected occurred." Elena held up one hand, and Marcus could clearly see something moving beneath the skin. Not veins, but fibrous networks that pulsed with their own light. "We integrated with it." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. "You mean you're part alien now?" "I mean we're part everything," Elena said quietly. "The organism wasn't just hegemony technology. It was a composite incorporating biological elements from all 6 species in their confederation. When it bonded with us, we didn't just gain their technological capabilities, we gained aspects of their biological advantages too." Marcus stared at her transformed features with new understanding. "That's why you won the fight." Keth engineering intuition, Vorhan reflexes, Zephyrian environmental adaptation. all filtered through human determination and creativity. Elena's eyes met his, and he saw something fierce burning in their shifting depths. We became something none of them expected, something they couldn't predict or counter. How many survivors were there? 12, out of a research team of 47. Elena's voice grew soft. The integration process. Not everyone's biology was compatible. Those who survived became something new, something that scares both humans and the hegemony. Marcus was beginning to understand why Elena was called the Widow, why she traveled alone. What happened to the others? Scattered. We knew that staying together would make us too tempting a target. But also, Elena hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. The change affects more than just our biology. We can sense each other across vast distances, share thoughts and experiences when we choose to. We're still individuals, but we're also becoming something larger. The ship's proximity alarm chimed, interrupting their conversation. Marcus checked the navigation display and frowned. We're still 6 hours from the next way station. There shouldn't be anything out here. Elena was already reaching for her helmet. How good are your sensors? Marcus activated the ship's long-range scanners and felt his blood turn cold. 3 contacts were approaching from behind, their configuration unmistakably hegemony. Sleek vessels with the characteristic biomechanical curves that made them look more grown than built. They found us, Elena said, her voice muffled by the helmet she was pulling on. Somehow they tracked us through hyperspace. That's impossible. Hyperspace travel is untraceable. Not for us. Not anymore. Elena's suit began to glow softly, patterns of light racing across its modified surface. The integration allows us to navigate hyperspace differently. We can sense quantum fluctuations, track ship movements across multiple dimensions. If they've captured one of the other survivors... Marcus didn't need her to finish the sentence. If the hegemony had one of the transformed humans, they could use that person's enhanced abilities to track the others, including Elena. How long before they reach us? Elena's helmet turned toward him, and he heard the soft clicking of her suit's systems activating. At their current speed? 14 minutes. But Marcus, there's something you need to understand. If they capture me, they don't just gain access to human hegemony hybrid technology. They gain access to all of it. Everything we learned at Wolf 359, everything we've discovered since then. Marcus was already plotting emergency jump coordinates. Then we don't let them capture you. In a cargo hauler against 3 hegemony interceptors? Those aren't good odds. Maybe not, Marcus said, his hands flying over the controls as he began emergency power-up procedures. But you said it yourself. Humans don't surrender when faced with impossible odds. Elena's suit was fully active now, streams of data flowing across its surface in languages that seemed to shift and change as he watched. There might be another option, but it would require you to trust me completely. What kind of option? The kind that changes you permanently. Elena's voice was steady, but Marcus could hear the underlying tension. I can share the integration temporarily, give you access to the enhanced capabilities we gained, but the process is irreversible. You'd become like me. Marcus felt the ship shudder as the hegemony vessels began targeting them with disruptor fields, trying to force them out of hyperspace. He had perhaps 10 minutes to decide the course of his life. What exactly does that mean for me? Enhanced reflexes, intuitive understanding of quantum mechanics, the ability to interface directly with both human and alien technology. Elena paused. But also isolation from normal humans, physical changes that mark you as different, and a connection to something larger than yourself that you might not be ready for. The ship shook again, more violently this time. Marcus could see the hyperspace tunnel beginning to destabilize around them. In minutes, They would be forced back into normal space, where the hegemony ships would have every advantage. Elena, I need to know, is what you're offering worth the cost? Her helmeted head turned toward him, and even through the tinted visor, he could see the intensity of her gaze. That depends on what you value more, staying human as you are now, or becoming something that can protect humanity's future. Marcus looked at the tactical display, at the overwhelming force bearing down on them, at this mysterious woman who represented humanity's first real advantage in an impossible war. The choice should have been terrifying. Instead, he found himself thinking about all the cargo runs he'd made, all the colonies struggling to survive on the edge of known space, all the people who would suffer if the hegemony continued their advance unchecked. How do we do this? Elena's suit began to emit a low harmonic frequency that seemed to resonate in his bones. Physical contact, but Marcus, once we begin, there's no going back. You'll be changed forever. Will I still be me? You'll be more than you are now. Whether that includes everything you are now, we'll find out together. The hegemony ships were closing fast, their disruptor fields intensifying. Marcus could feel the Lucky Strike's hull beginning to stress under the assault. In moments, they would be defenseless prey for an enemy that showed no mercy. Marcus reached across the space between their seats and took Elena's gloved hand in his. Do it. The moment their hands touched, Marcus felt electricity race up his arm and into his nervous system. But it wasn't electricity. It was information, alien and vast and utterly overwhelming. His vision exploded into spectrums of light he'd never imagined. His hearing expanded to detect quantum fluctuations in the ship's hull, and his mind suddenly understood the mathematical elegance underlying hyperspace navigation. But more than that, he felt Elena's presence in his thoughts, calm and reassuring as the alien components began integrating with his biology. Through their shared connection, he experienced flashes of memory from Wolf 359, the terror of the initial attack, the desperate fight for survival, and the moment when 12 humans transcended their limitations to become something unprecedented in the galaxy. Now, Elena said, and her voice resonated both in his ears and directly in his mind. Let's show them what humans can really do. The transformation coursed through Marcus like liquid fire, rewriting his biology at the cellular level. Through his expanded senses, he could perceive the Lucky Strike not as a collection of metal and circuits, but as a living system of energy flows and quantum probabilities. More incredibly, he could feel the ship's potential, not just what it was, but what it could become. The integration is accelerating, Elena said, her voice coming through both his ears and the neural link that now connected them. Your brain is processing the changes faster than any of us experienced at Wolf 359. Marcus gripped the ship's controls, and instead of cold metal, he felt warm responsiveness. The Lucky Strike systems weren't just accepting his commands. They were anticipating them. I can feel the ship's structure, every power coupling and data pathway. It's like the whole vessel is an extension of my nervous system. That's the Keth engineering integration. Now focus on our pursuers. Marcus directed his enhanced senses toward the hegemony vessels, and what he discovered made him gasp. The three ships weren't just machines. They were composite beings, blending artificial intelligence with organic consciousness from each of the hegemony species. He could sense the crew's thoughts, their confidence in their superior technology, their complete inability to comprehend what they were facing. They're not expecting resistance, Marcus said, his fingers dancing across controls that now responded to his thoughts as much as his touch. They think we're just another human cargo ship. Let's educate them, Elena replied. The hegemony disruptor fields finally succeeded in forcing the Lucky Strike out of hyperspace. Marcus felt the transition like a gentle settling rather than the violent shudder he'd expected. Around them, normal space reasserted itself, revealing the three alien vessels in their full predatory glory. The lead ship was Keth-designed, its biomechanical hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that served as both communication and intimidation. The two flanking vessels bore the sharp crystalline profiles of Vorhan engineering, their weapons already charging with lethal intent. "Human vessel, you will prepare to be boarded," came the transmission in heavily accented standard. "Resistance will result in immediate termination." Marcus looked at Elena, seeing her clearly for the first time since their connection formed. Her transformed features seemed perfectly natural now, beautiful in their alien enhancement. Through their shared link, he could feel her confidence, her anticipation. "Your response?" she asked. Marcus activated the communication system, but when he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that hadn't been there before, undertones that registered on frequencies the hegemony could perceive but humans normally couldn't. "Hegemony vessels, this is Captain Marcus Chen of the Lucky Strike. You are in violation of human territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The silence that followed stretched for several seconds. Then the Keth commander's voice came back, and Marcus could hear confusion beneath the arrogance. "Human, your vocal patterns indicate biological modification. Explain the nature of your alterations." "The nature of our alterations," Elena said softly, "is that we've become everything you feared humans could be." Marcus felt power flowing through the ship's systems. Not just electrical power, but something deeper. The Lucky Strike's hull began to resonate at frequencies that made the hegemony vessel's sensors scream warnings. Weapon systems that had been designed for cargo protection suddenly revealed capabilities that shouldn't exist. "Marcus, how is this possible?" Elena asked, her mental voice filled with wonder. "I think the integration isn't just giving me access to alien abilities," Marcus replied, his hands moving over controls that were reconfiguring themselves to match his thoughts. "It's letting me understand what human technology could really do if we stopped limiting ourselves." The Keth vessel fired first, a beam of coherent energy that should have vaporized the Lucky Strike's hull. Instead, Marcus felt the ship's defensive systems he hadn't known existed, activate automatically. The cargo hauler's hull didn't just deflect the energy, it absorbed it, channeled it, and converted it into raw power for their own weapons. "Impossible," came the transmission from the hegemony commander. "You keep using that word," Marcus said, his voice carrying a hint of Elena's fierce smile. "But you don't seem to understand what it means when humans are involved." The Lucky Strike moved like no cargo vessel had ever moved before. Marcus felt the ship respond to his enhanced reflexes, turning and diving through space with an elegance that made the hegemony pilots struggle to keep up. But more than that, he could sense the quantum probability streams that governed movement through space, allowing him to anticipate his enemy's actions before they made them. The two Vorhan escorts tried to flank them, their crystalline hulls splitting to reveal weapons arrays that crackled with lethal energy. Marcus felt their attack patterns through his expanded awareness and smiled grimly. "Elena, can you interface with their systems directly?" "Through our connection?" "Yes, but it's dangerous. If they detect the intrusion, they won't," Marcus said with sudden certainty, "because they're not looking for something like us." Elena's consciousness touched his through their neural link, and together they reached out toward the hegemony vessels. What they found was revelation. The hegemony ship's biological components were designed to interface only with their creators' nervous systems. The alien AI systems couldn't adapt to truly foreign consciousness patterns. But the hybrid nature of Marcus and Elena's enhanced minds allowed them to present themselves as familiar while remaining fundamentally human. "We're in," Elena whispered, her mental voice filled with amazement. Through the enemy ship's sensors, Marcus could see the lucky strike as the hegemony crews saw it. A small, apparently defenseless cargo vessel that somehow defied every known law of physics and warfare. But more importantly, he could access their communication systems, their navigation computers, their weapon controls. Hegemony Command Vessel, Marcus broadcast, using their own communication array. You wanted to study human adaptability. Allow me to provide a demonstration. The Keth ship's weapons suddenly turned on its escort vessels. The Vorhan pilots had only seconds to realize what was happening before their own commander's ship opened fire on them. But Marcus wasn't content with simple misdirection. Elena, show them what human creativity really looks like. Together, they reached deeper into the hegemony systems, not just controlling them, but understanding them. The biomechanical components that made hegemony technology so responsive also made it vulnerable to the right kind of influence. And humans, Marcus realized, had an advantage that none of the hegemony species possessed: the ability to think in ways that transcended their programming. The Keth vessel's bioluminescent hull patterns began to change, displaying messages in perfect hegemony standard that translated roughly to "Humans are not what we expected. Withdrawal recommended. Priority, survival." "You're making their ship talk," Elena laughed, the sound coming through both their shared link and the ship's audio systems. "I'm making their ship think," Marcus corrected. "And what it's thinking is that maybe attacking humans wasn't such a good idea after all." The two Vorhan escorts had managed to avoid their commander's misdirected fire and were regrouping for another attack. But their movement seemed sluggish now, uncertain. Through the hijacked sensors, Marcus could monitor their internal communications. "The humans have demonstrated capabilities beyond our projections," one pilot reported. "Recommend immediate withdrawal and fleet-level response." "Negative," came the reply from the Keth commander. "We must capture the modified humans for study. All hegemony strategic planning depends on understanding their capabilities." Marcus felt Elena's consciousness touch his again, and this time her mental voice carried a note of predatory satisfaction. "Then let's give them something to understand." The Lucky Strike's cargo bay doors opened, and what emerged wasn't debris or emergency equipment. It was a stream of energy that seemed to exist partially in normal space and partially in dimensions that hurt to perceive directly. The energy reached out toward the hegemony vessels like living tendrils, touching their hulls with gentle curiosity. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked, feeling power flowing through him that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the ship, beyond himself. "Connecting," Elena replied. "The integration doesn't just give us access to hegemony abilities. It gives us access to what lies between species, between technologies, between possibilities." The energy tendrils made contact with the alien ships, and suddenly Marcus could feel the consciousness of every being aboard them. Keth engineers whose minds worked in mathematical symphonies, Vorhan pilots whose reflexes operated in time frames measured in microseconds, and underlying it all, the vast artificial intelligences that coordinated hegemony technology across multiple star systems. But what shocked him most was what he felt from the enemy crews: fear. "They're afraid of us," Marcus said, his voice filled with wonder. "They should be," Elena replied. "Because we represent something they never imagined. Humans don't just adapt to circumstances, we transcend them. We take what exists and make it into what should exist." The hegemony vessels were trying to withdraw now, their engines lighting up for emergency escape maneuvers, but the energy tendrils held them gently in place. Not as weapons, but as connections. "Marcus, I want to try something that's never been attempted before." "What?" "Instead of fighting them, let's teach them." Through their shared connection, Marcus felt Elena reach out to the frightened alien crews. But instead of attacking their minds or controlling their actions, she simply shared human memories. The struggle to survive in hostile environments, the drive to explore unknown territories, the refusal to surrender when faced with extinction. The effect was immediate and profound. The Keth commander's voice came over the communication channel, but the arrogance was gone, replaced by something that sounded like awe. Humans, your species experiences fear as we do, but you react to it differently. You use fear as motivation rather than paralysis. That's right, Marcus said, feeling the truth of it in his transformed biology. Fear tells us something is important enough to fight for. And your technological adaptations. You do not replace your limitations. You incorporate them into greater capabilities. Elena's laugh was gentle now, no longer predatory but welcoming. We become more than we were while remaining who we are. That's what you couldn't understand about the Wolf 359 survivors. The Vorhan pilot's voice joined the conversation, their words coming through translation matrices that struggled with concepts that had no equivalent in their language. This integration you have achieved. It preserves individual consciousness while creating collective capability. It is elegant in a way we had not considered. Marcus felt the truth settling in his transformed mind. The hegemony hadn't attacked human space out of malice or aggression. They'd attacked out of fear. Fear of a species that didn't fit their understanding of biological limitations, that refused to accept the boundaries other races considered absolute. You're afraid that humans will upset the balance in this galaxy, Marcus said, that we'll keep adapting and growing until we become something you can't predict or control. Your assessment is accurate, the Keth commander admitted. Each species in the hegemony has found their optimal configuration, their perfect balance of capabilities. Humans continue to evolve, continue to change. This represents a fundamental uncertainty in our strategic planning. Elena's voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of prophecy. Then stop planning against us and start planning with us. Because what we've become isn't the end of human evolution. It's the beginning. The energy tendrils released the hegemony vessels, but the connection remained. Through their shared neural link, Marcus could feel Elena reaching out to the other Wolf 359 survivors scattered across human space, sharing what they had learned, what they had discovered. This changes everything, Marcus said, looking at Elena with new understanding. Yes, she replied, removing her helmet again and smiling at him with those transformed features that no longer seemed alien but simply evolved. The question is, are you ready to help humanity take the next step? Marcus looked out at the hegemony vessels, now holding position nearby rather than attacking. He felt the Lucky Strike's enhanced systems humming around him, felt his own biology continuing to adapt and grow, felt the vast network of possibilities that was opening before his species. I think, he said, reaching out to take Elena's luminescent hand, I'm ready to see what's possible when humans stop limiting themselves. The widow was no longer alone, and humanity was no longer just another species struggling for survival in an indifferent galaxy. They had become something new, something unprecedented, a species that could adapt without losing themselves, that could evolve without abandoning their core nature. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time since the war began, that felt like a promise rather than a threat.